So we are created to be aroused by things around us, sexually and otherwise. That is just part of our design. That is part of the way our hormones and our biology work. One of the things I have found is we sexualize things that aren't sexual in our life. Meaning, I could be bored, and then therefore I start going down fantasy land, sexual arousal, intrigue, curiosity, all of that. Rather than what it really is I'm just bored. That's one step to kind of understand on how we are and how we deal with anxieties, because a lot of times what we do when we get anxious about stuff is we steer it places sometimes that aren't always good. The other thought I've got that I think helps people is, rather than thinking through the lens of, man, I really wish this desire would go away from me, which I hear this a lot, of maybe God will just take away this desire. I would not pray that on anybody. So, because it's a good thing. Then it comes down to, how do you steer it? Because obviously there are boundaries and parameters and guidelines in your character, I'm guessing, from what you're describing, you want to live according to, which I honor and I respect that. And that calls us to more, and that's a good thing. So then it comes down to, how do you find ways to release energies? That it may not be the sexual drive energy, but energy leaving our body is energy. And that's where a good workout, a good walk, a good conversation with people, a good sense of connection with other people can help take a little bit of the edges off. Doesn't necessarily take it all away, but it is something that can be incredibly beneficial and helpful to make it to where it doesn't feel as overwhelming. Obviously, trauma leaves a lasting impact. But one of the things I believe in is, first off, having some good professional help with a therapist, somebody that is trained to help with the world of trauma, that can help you work through the processes of healing. Because when you're talking about the aspect of dealing with our traumas, particularly when it comes to sexual, a lot of times our healing comes through the very medium that produced it. And that means creating relationships, particularly when you get into married life, that have a understanding and a compassion around it that allows you to step by step navigate forward in how you orient this aspect of your life and your relationship, because there will be additional anxieties, there will be additional fears that can come up from this, just because it's a natural body reaction. And so oftentimes it just comes down to, how do you create healthier areas of your life that entail your sex and sexuality to start healing that. But triggers are still going to happen. That is one of the things that deep down in our bodies, those triggers get embedded and they will come back up. And that's where having the tools to be able to settle yourself down when it's triggered, particularly in acts of sex during marriage, and having the ability to calm yourself, soothe yourself, reconnect, and having a compassionate spouse in that moment really makes a big difference. Because then what you do is you both evolve and grow much deeper and emotionally bonded and connected than other people even get chances to taste sometimes. Arousal and just our sexuality is one of those things where there are definitely lines, but it's hard to figure out real cleanly and clearly where are they on some aspects of it. That's what you're describing, right? I think, ma'am, to be blunt, part of it is because you're a human being. So we are intrigued by people. We are attracted to things, and it creates things in us. It's normal. Yeah, Kiara just put on the chat, it's normal, sis. Amen. It absolutely is. So there are aspects in our brains that get triggered and stimulated, if you will, which then creates things in our bodies. And that's where I love the framework here, that the fact that I am intrigued or aroused or curious in and of itself is absolutely not wrong. Okay? Because that's human. I see something and it takes my breath away. That's the same kind of experience. It's just not sexual, right? So, or I'm in awe of something, or something happens that is really deep and profound and it produces tears. That's just a natural thing. But when you talk about this in the context of a relationship as it's evolving, and you're describing okay, thoughts will come up and I start maybe following a thread that can lead into I wonders and the curiosities and the fantasies or the daydreams. Where you steer it matters. And that's the difference. That's where the idea of taking thoughts captive comes into play. It's not saying keep thoughts away. It's just saying take them captive when they do come up so that you don't go and obsess and start long and plan and move into the realm that can start to look more like the world of lusting. Because lusting is more of a possession component of it than just the fact that, wow, I'm really curious about what this could be. Obviously, if I keep going down that thread, now I'm getting closer and closer, if not to a problem it could create. But what you're trying to do with the idea of, I start feeling these things, and here, I'll end it with this, man. If you have a time where you start to feel tingly and you want to steer that better, well, pray to God like you're describing, but thank him for that sensation. Thank him for what is it going on and experiencing, because that's a wholeness of your life. And I would be willing to bet there would be energy that would come from the Spirit in that kind of a conversation with him that then helps whatever the next step that needs to be to continue the process of keeping it captive. So I had one question I saw roll through that, how can you know, this is from Lily, how can you know you're sexually compatible if no one has sex before marriage? This is a very common occurrence, but one of the things I believe when you're talking about compatibility is there's room for the both of you, because biologically speaking, yes, there might be some slight concern of, is the penis going to fit in the vagina perfectly? For the most part, with most people, the answer to that is yes. There are instances when it's not. I've had some clients over the 2 decades of doing this where that has been the case. There are things you can do to accommodate and address this, but on compatibility, a lot of that kind of thing, when we're talking about are we compatible, I think one of the things that really does matter is, am I compatible in all areas of life with my potential spouse, not just sexually, because you get an opportunity to be exposed to who each are. And so all areas matter. Sexually is the one that's just oftentimes the most intense. And so, I mean, I've been married to my wife for 30 years. There's still things we're working out on as we have grown and evolved and changed, and have our oldest is now off at college, and that changes the dynamic in our home. And that's a constant shift of learning compatibility with each other, because that's what married life actually is. Good relationships are just constant evolving and growing of both people. To compatibility with skills, then I think it really becomes having real good conversations about what are your values, what do you want to live by, what's important to you, what are the big things in how you want to live life, and then from there you see how in line you are with those. Because if the big things aren't close in line, the small things get really, really big. Fetishes are one of those things that make a lot of people cringe just because of the word and the context, and oftentimes the taboo associated with it. To me, what matters here is the terminology and the meanings associated with it matter. Because if it's just a blanket statement of I refuse to be in a relationship or serious with somebody that has a fetish, well, personally speaking, I would want a little more data than what does that exactly mean? What was this fetish? Because a lot of what we have in life, one person could see it as just a natural arousal thing, and another person sees it as a fetish. Some of it is just in the eye of beholders. Obviously, there are some that I think we could maybe universally agree that could end up being harmful. But then there are others that, man, there's a lot of discrepancy in what it really means. And so on the one hand, if you're starting a relationship conversation with somebody and you get that early on of, you know what, I refuse to be with somebody that's got a fetish. Well, then what that might have done is you just got your rejection early, and that saves you both some trouble. So, right? And so obviously when you're talking about fetishes, that might take a little bit of a history with the relationship before you start talking, but that's typically not first date conversation. So I'm assuming, but it is one of those things that, okay, well, good. And maybe there's a chance to, you get a conversation, you see an immediate kind of pullback, and then there's like, but hold on, let me explain the journey. And now all of a sudden you see somebody that's been through something, as you're describing you, that's capable of evolving, maturing, redefining and defining who they are. That's a good and better partner in the long run, most likely, right? Because I mean, we're all going to have struggles. Some just get labeled a lot harsher than others, but it's a universal thing that thank you for God and His grace, because we all are human and broken and have done things that, man, if I get judged for my worst things, I hope everybody does. It's one of those things that's a human thing. And when you can have honest conversations about it, man, you give the potential of a relationship to be even better. I think that there will be like a tendency, predominantly maybe more male than female, to lead with that more willingly, because some of it's the assertiveness men can attack life with, the higher drive they may have. I mean, there's a lot of different factors, not one solely. If there's a guy that you are beginning a relationship with, having a conversation with, and as it's progressing, he is persistent with it, or he brings it up really early, that actually, at face value, is really good data for you. You can graciously say, you know what, I'm not comfortable to talk about that yet. I would rather talk about the other aspects of life and what could be and what is, than not that yet. And if he doesn't take that well, then there you go. There's good information for you about who he is and what he's after. One of the things that's interesting to me is living according to some character and boundaries of what you are comfortable talking about or doing. That's not judgmental of somebody else. That's you living with your character. Judgmental comes into play when you start to condemn them for the stance or the approach they may take, right? But if you're like, you know what, I'm not comfortable with that. If he may take that as judgmental, but you living according to your boundary, that's just you living according to your character, girl. That's a good thing. Absolutely, you can do it politely and bluntly. Those two can go together. Absolutely.